Hey guys, it's Jenny. This is May 24th, and we are actually having youth tonight outside in the park. But in case you weren't able to make it, I am going ahead and recording this. It's a good practice for me, and it's done for everybody to see later. Before I begin the lesson, I want to invite you guys to church. Every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, we're doing church out in the park. So bring a lawn chair, bring a face mask, and join us out there. We also will be distributing June calendars as soon as I get them finished, and that will be sometime this week. I will text them out on a remind and have hard copies available next week. So I'm going to start this lesson. I'm going to share my screen. And let's see, I want this one right here. Okay. So short background. Israel and Judah used to be one big country. David was the first king of Israel, and then Solomon was his son, who took over after David died. And then Solomon's son, Rehoboam, takes over, and Rehoboam wasn't the greatest ruler, and he allows the country to split. Israel remains Israel, and then that bottom portion they ended up calling Judah. So now we have two different kingdoms. We've got Israel, who has their own leaders, their own kings, who ended up pretty much being all pagan and not of God. And then Judah, the kingdom of Judah, their kings weren't bad kings. They tried to do the will of God, but their own self-ambition got in the way on a regular basis. Last week we talked about Abijah. Abijah was at battle. He was outnumbered 2-1, and he was able to call on God, and God delivered them a victory. And we talked about how using logic does not always work when you're talking about God things, because God's wisdom far outweighs our knowledge. And knowledge is kind of the opposite of faith, because knowledge, you see it, you think it. Faith, you just have to believe it, and you don't actually have it there tangible in front of you. So after Abijah died, King Asa was his son. And then today we're going to talk about Jehosophat. And Jehosophat, again, was the king of Judah during this time. And the king of Israel was Ahab. You've probably heard of King Ahab before. He was married to Jezebel. They were really bad people. When Jehosophat came into rule, he did a lot of good things. He tore down all of the poles of worship of the pagan gods. He sent priests and officials throughout the nation to preach the word of God. He increased the military presence of the land, strengthening the land, and then he strengthens the people because he was increasing their faith. All in all, Jehosophat gains a lot of wealth. He has a lot of peace because his enemies fear him. But then he makes a bad decision. Jehosophat decides that he wants to make peace with King Ahab. He wants Israel and Judah to get along again. So peace is not a bad thing. Of course, it would be a good decision to pursue peace, if at all possible. But the one thing that Jehosophat forgot to do was that he did not ask God about whether or not he should make peace with Israel. And again, if you don't consult God on your decisions, oftentimes you'll make bad ones. So that was the first bad decision. The second bad decision is that he marries his son off to Ahab's daughter. So now not only is Ahab the king of Israel, Ahab's daughter is also now Jehoshaphat's daughter-in-law. Remember that King Ahab believed in pagan gods, and he was not of our God. So by marrying off his son to Ahab's daughter, Jehosophat was opening the door to all of these pagan rituals and things in his son's life. So that was the second bad mistake. First bad mistake, he chose to try to get peace between the two nations, even though it wasn't God's will. Second one, he chose to marry off his son into a pagan religion. And the third mistake was that he decided to make an agreement with Ahab. He goes to Israel. Ahab wines and dines him, treats him wonderfully, and then he asks him, hey, so I want to go into this other country and destroy them and take over their land. Let's do it together. And Jehosophat was at least smart enough to want to consult the prophets. What he didn't realize was that being in Israel, all of the prophets were also pagan. But there was one prophet who wasn't a pagan, so they call on him, and this prophet says, don't do it. Don't go in there. If you do it, King Ahab, you will surely die. Well, King Ahab doesn't like the instructions of the prophet, and neither does Jehosophat, but they go ahead and do it. Despite what the prophet said, King Jehosophat decides to make allies with Ahab, and they go into this battle together. In this battle, Ahab is killed, and Jehosophat narrowly escapes with his life. When Jehosophat returns to Judah, one of the seers scolds Jehosophat for his dumb decision making, yet points out that he wasn't a total screw up because he did, after all, tear down the pagan poles and increase the faith of the people. Later on in Israel, King Jehosophat also has a miraculous battle, much like his father did. But things weren't the same because he made that first bad decision. And what I want you to realize is that that first bad decision is always the easiest. The first bad decision is always the hardest. And then after that, they come pretty easily. An example in my life of the first bad decision. My family worked to pay off all of our debt. We had no credit card debt. All we had was mortgage, didn't have any car payments. And I decided I needed a new hearing aid. Top of the line, a new one had just come out. It was Wi-Fi. It was just a pretty nice hearing aid. And my other one had stopped working. So I rationalized to myself, I'm going to go ahead and open up a credit card, and I'm going to buy it on that credit card. And then we won't use that credit card anymore after that. Well, that was my first bad decision, is opening up that credit card account once we had already gotten rid of all of our debt. Well, as you can imagine, after I got that, the spending on the credit card came really easily after that. Oh, we have a car repair, let's just put it on the credit card. Oh, we have this and that come up, let's just put it on the credit card. We'll pay it off. Well, we didn't pay it off, and now we're starting all over, and we've got that credit card debt to pay off, and it's got its consequences. It takes a long time to do. But it's the same for you too. When you start hanging out with bad people, guess what? That first time you choose to hang out with that person is really hard to come to that conclusion. But after that, it's really easy to hang out with that bad person. And then you start making bad decisions. Neglecting your homework. That first time you neglect your homework is pretty difficult. But then after that, you get so far behind, you don't even know what to do, and you start skipping out on a lot of your homework. Drugs. Nobody has ever said, hey, I want to become a drug addict. They make that first hard decision that they want to try drugs, and then after that, they just keep doing it because those decisions get easier and easier. So moving on, all decisions have consequences. Now, Jehosophat almost lost his life. When he returned, he was scolded by one of the seers. But the biggest consequence of Ahab's mistakes didn't even occur during his lifetime. It happened after he died. His son was named Jehoram. And his son, because he had been married to Ahab's wife, had learned all of the pagan ways and did not know the love of God. He was an evil king. He was more like Ahab than he was like Jehosophat. And that was the beginning of some really mean, evil kings for Judah. Up until this point, they had faithful kings who made mistakes and didn't always follow God, but for the most part, they tried to stay in line with God. And then once Jehoshaphat married his son into the pagan religion, it never was able to be the same, because now Jehoram has all of these pagan beliefs and is no longer believing in God. My final point is seeking the wisdom of God is always greater than our knowledge. Jehosophat thought he was doing a good thing when he was making peace with Israel. After all, they were once united. But he seeks to ask God's wisdom in the matter. Jehoshaphat was smart. There is no doubt about it. He had done great things for Judah. He had gained great wealth and respect. But being smart was no match for seeking God's will and his wisdom. Logic told Jehoshaphat that if he wanted peace to last, he needed to get in good with Ahab and be friendly to Israel. Yet his own desires overtook his will to seek what God wanted him. So you may be really smart in your daily decision making, but if you don't seek God's wisdom in those decisions, you're no better than Jehoshaphat, and you're going to have no better consequences than that. So as I always end, so what, now what? I just want you to remember that it is never too late to turn things around. Jehoshaphat went back to his nation after he had made allies of Ahab and after he nearly was killed. And he was able to find God's forgiveness. That didn't mean that the consequences were no longer there. The consequences were very much still there, but he was able to see God's forgiveness. The other thing is that seeking God's wisdom for you daily is extremely important in your life. Every single decision that you make, you need to seek God's wisdom in that decision. That means that you need to pray every day. You need to read every day something like the Bible or a devotion, something to get you centered on God so that you can easily access his wisdom. So let me get my face back here. There I am. Hello. Anyway, so we will meet back next Friday, next Sunday at the church at the park at 5:30 to 7, and I hope you can make it. Love you, praying for you.